there's going to be a lot more instances of things that it didn't make sense until later. My side of the house had the most activity. There's a little den area and then French doors, bedroom. The den area always sounded like a party was going on. Like it always just sounded like a party going on in the next room. Sometimes in the middle of the night, we would just look at each other like, why is it just so loud? So much was going on. But by that time, we were aware. This story happens before we were really aware. The relationship that I'm in now was new at that time. So we're talking on the phone late at night, cupcaking, falling asleep on the phone, all like the cute stuff like that. At this time, what I remember was I was falling asleep. He's like on a video game, not really looking at the phone, but like he's looking at the screen playing the video game. We talk a little bit like that. This was early on in the relationship. I didn't want him to see me looking crazy. So I remember being like, I don't want to fall asleep on the phone and he sees that I'm drooling or something crazy. So I'm laying down with my head on the pillow, but I have the phone next to the pillow facing upwards. So I can see him, but he can just see darkness because it's just pointed straight up at the ceilings. The ceilings were very high, so it was just darkness. Okay, I'm going to try my best to describe this. So I'm falling asleep. For some reason, I decide to open my eyes, and when I open my eyes, I see my eye on the screen, like fully on the screen. I see him, and in the little box is my eye, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, how did I move the phone? Like I didn't even remember falling asleep, but I'm just trying to figure this out. Mind you, this is like maybe 2 seconds of me looking at it and trying to understand what I'm looking at. I think my brain just wouldn't make sense of it. And I see my eye like slowly back out of the camera and fade into darkness. At this time, he's playing the game and he looks over. I see him see it as it's backing up. But he just like looks back at the game and he continues playing the game. I'm starting to realize something is off, but it's still fairly new in the relationship and I don't want to scare him. I'd never really talked to anybody about what we had been experiencing in the house unless you like lived in the house. But I was definitely not telling him because I didn't want to scare him off. So I'm like, if he doesn't say anything, I'm not going to say anything. And I hear him say something like, that's crazy. So I remember thinking, please be talking about something on the game. So I'm like, what? I remember you saying one thing, you remember you saying another thing. 'Cause I remember you being like, I just saw your face for a second. And you remember being like...
And I said...
So you said that first?
No, I said, why are you looking at the camera like that? Then you said what you said.
Oh, okay. All right. So he says, why are you looking at the camera like that? And I'm kind of shook. So I'm just like, huh? And he's like, I just saw your face for a second. And I was like, no, you didn't. And I immediately shot straight up and took off out the room. There was actually so much about that room that I didn't talk to anybody about it. It just wasn't something that I wanted to talk to anybody about or even admit what was really happening. It wasn't until he started actually sleeping over and having his own experiences and then later opening up to me about the experiences that he had in that house that we started to put the story together and things started to actually fully come together. And I ended up talking to somebody who lived in that house about 30 years before I did, and she confirmed some things too. But that didn't happen until maybe 6 months after I moved out of that house. We didn't put together a lot of things until later.
Unexplainable things that have happened to me have also been in her presence. She's just one of those like magnets for this type of thing. So my stepmom's best friend from childhood passed away when they were in their early 20s. Later, my little brother, my stepmom's son, was born on the birthday of this particular friend. And my brother was born with like 4 concurrent congenital heart conditions. So his whole early life, first couple of years of life, he was in and out of the hospital, having heart surgery, cath labs, all that kind of stuff. On Valentine's Day one year, my father got my stepmom just like this crappy stuffed heart from like a gas station. And when you pressed on the heart's hand, it would play this song. And the song was like, Do 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 do. Do 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 do. If you know it. And they started having this thing happen where pretty much every year on my brother's birthday, also the friend's birthday, or Christmas, or anytime my brother was going to have kind of a big procedure done in the hospital, this heart would go off by itself. And it like didn't need to have batteries. Like just randomly you would hear the do 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 when something big was going on, particularly around my brother, birthday twins. So I knew about the heart. I knew that this would happen sometimes. Spooky, but nice, right? Because it's assumed to be the best friend. Who wouldn't love that? That's nice. One day, me and my stepmom are home alone, and we're just sitting downstairs, sort of folding laundry or something, just talking. And she's telling me about this dream she had about her best friend one night. And there were a lot of unanswered questions kind of around this particular friend's death. And, my stepmom was really missing her one night. My father has night terrors, so he'll often kind of like go sleep on the couch if he's having a bad night so he doesn't disturb my stepmom, and he'll always close the bedroom door behind him. In this particular dream, my stepmom dreamt that the door was closed, my father wasn't there, and her friend comes in the door, kind of like gets into bed with her, and they just talk. And she told me that this felt so real that her friend answered all the questions that she had surrounding her death. They got to express how much they missed each other, and it was just really like calming and soothing for her to have that sort of final conversation with her friend. She wakes up the next morning from this dream and the door is open, as if in the dream her friend had opened the door. So she's telling me this really like meaningful dream she had with her friend, and we're both folding laundry, and she pauses in the middle of laundry and she goes, "Wait, hold on." And from upstairs in the nursery where that heart is, as we're talking about this friend, we both hear do 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 do. It sent chills down my spine because we were talking about her. She knew we were talking about her. This thing went off. And it was just a sign of like, I know you're talking about me. I'm here. However, I was 16 and like a scaredy cat, and I was sleeping in the room where the heart was. So I walked in later and I was like, hi. Please don't do anything while I'm here. Thank you. Love you. Bye.
On like we're asking some silly questions like, oh, who am I gonna marry when I'm older, and it wasn't really saying a whole lot. But looking back on it, something that kind of freaks me out is when we asked who we were talking to, it went to a Z, and I'm not gonna talk any further on that. If you know, you know. And so we went upstairs to go get some, water, some snacks, stuff like that. My parents asked me, what are you guys doing downstairs? And we say, we're playing the Ouija board. And my parents are like, nope, absolutely not. You are not playing that. Please stop doing that. And so we went downstairs, we closed it up, and what followed after that freaked me out. So we heard some voices that night, nothing crazy, honestly. It wasn't like the super dramatic thing. But for years, I started hearing voices. I started seeing some things like people calling out my name in the middle of the night. I saw something in my closet, just like random things here and there. I vividly remember when I was younger, this was middle school now. I don't remember the exact time, but my siblings were, young, and we were home alone. My parents were traveling that day. And so they were coming back home. We were alone. Our babysitter had left. And we all, for some reason, looked down to the right. And so that's where our hallway was. And we had a really long extended hallway. And then our parents' doorway was facing where that hallway was. And so we all look over at the same time. It was the weirdest thing. And we see this man, like this really, really tall man standing there. And all of us say nothing. And we see this man turn and walk down the hallway. And so I look at them and I'm like, did you see that? And they're like, yeah. And I don't know what made us do this, but we went throughout the house and started trying to find if there was a man in the house. And if you've seen any horror movies, it's definitely not what you're supposed to do. Like, don't do that. But for some reason, that was, the mindset at the time. And we searched everywhere. Nothing was there, So there was no man. And we start moving on knowing that, we had just seen some random dude in our house and he disappeared. And so for years after that, nothing crazy really happened. Again, sometimes I'd hear somebody walking in the house when I was home alone or like in the middle of the night, but I just ignored it, tried not to give it any mind. But this is where the main event happens. So my brother passed away when I was in high school, and he lived in Tennessee with, my other family. My parents are, not together. So that side of the family, told me the news, and I went out and, flew out for the funeral. And so the day after the funeral, when I was flying home, my stepmom had lost her keys. And I went into her bathroom. She sets things in weird places. So she told me to look in her bathroom, look in her closet just to see if she dropped it, try to find, where the keys are so we can leave and go to breakfast together before I have to get on the plane. And I don't know what it was, but I felt such a difference in the air. Like the atmosphere went cold. I can't describe it. But if you've experienced something like this, it's a very eerie feeling. I felt like I was isolated, even though there were 3 other people in the house, but I was alone in that room. And all of a sudden I felt like metaphorically cornered in the closet, and I heard my name being called with my brother's voice. And it's like time stopped. I knew it wasn't him, because I thought that if it really was him, I wouldn't be freaked out. I wouldn't be feeling such a dark, gross feeling. Mind you, I'm already emotional because, I loved my brother and he had just passed away. And so hearing his voice was like weird, and it was emotional for me. And I ran out of that room because I felt like whatever was talking to me was not him and it wasn't safe. So I ran out, and my stepmom had been calling for me for 10 minutes and I didn't hear her. So literally, it's like time had stopped. So I told them about this at breakfast, and they're like, oh, I wish he would talk to me. And I'm like, but it wasn't him. Like, this is the weird thing. It wasn't him, right? And so I go home, months go by, nothing happens. I'm grieving my brother, I'm sad. And I talk to him sometimes, at that point. I still do, but, at this, during this story, I was talking to him sometimes, and whatever it was that talked to me at my stepmom's house followed me to my house in Minnesota. So I was in Tennessee. That's where the first event happened. I'm back in Minnesota at my mom's house where, the Ouija board thing had happened. We're keeping that in mind. So I go to bed one night. I'm the only one that lives upstairs, right? And so that's where the front door is. My bedroom at the time was right next to the front door. And so we had a staircase going downstairs, and that's where my parents and my siblings were. My mom would stay upstairs in the kitchen, dining room area until, sometimes later in the night, just getting projects done. She's a very crafty person. So I went to bed knowing that she was, kind of within the vicinity. I felt safe. And what I did was I always closed the doors and closed the blinds before I went to bed because, I had experienced some things. I was a little freaked out. And I had already some nights experienced sleep paralysis. And, I was already kind of on edge about that. So close all the blinds, close the doors. And I had my radio on, and I start, kind of dozing off, and my radio sounds slower and distorted all of a sudden. And I'm like, something's about to happen. And it did. So I felt like I heard the doors opening, but I was like, no, I'm going crazy. There's nobody else that would be, but it was both doors, my closet door and my door to my bathroom that I heard opening. And I'm like, there's not two people in my room. Like, there's no way. And I didn't even hear my room door open, the main door. And so I can't get up. It's like I am, I'm in sleep paralysis. I can't do anything. I can't talk. I can't open my eyes. I can't move. And all of a sudden I feel myself getting up and I'm like, this isn't me. This isn't me. And so I feel myself get out of bed, but I don't feel like I'm in control of my own body. And I feel myself reach my hand out for my door. And I feel the doorknob. I start, opening my door. And all of a sudden I hear my brother's voice come from my bathroom and him saying, Maddie, I need to talk to you. And I don't know how, but somehow, some way I was able to talk in that moment. And I'm like, no, get out. Like, I know this isn't you. I don't want to hear it. And I don't know what it was, but it was like, okay, I'll leave. Like, okay, you'll leave. Okay. But here I am, like, kind of traumatized because, it's my brother's voice again. And I'm still grieving. Like, this is only a couple months after he passed. And so I'm like, well, what if it was my brother? And I carried on that guilt for so long thinking like, well, what if it was him? But it was that creepy feeling again. And I'm like, you know what? If this was really my brother, there is no way that he would do this to me, that he would freak me out, that he would try to do all this stuff. Like, there's just no way. I feel like he would come and try to peacefully talk to me and have a conversation. But, that's a whole other conversation. And so I opened my eyes, after I muster enough courage, I open my eyes and all my doors are open, all of them. And nobody was upstairs. My mom is already fast asleep at this point. It was midnight. And I know this story sounds crazy, but this really happened and it still freaks me out to this day. And I